The Void's advance was relentless, a tidal wave of bioorganic horror surging through Lura Prime's outer solar system. The first line of defense, a network of automated sentry stations orbiting the outermost planets, fell swiftly. Automated energy cannons, designed to deter opportunistic raiders, were no match for the Void's relentless swarms. The next line of defense, orbital fortresses bristling with heavy weaponry and crewed by seasoned veterans, fought valiantly. Their cannons roared in defiance, unleashing volleys of energy bolts and missiles, but the Void's sheer numbers and relentless aggression proved overwhelming. One by one, the fortresses succumbed to the onslaught, their hulls breached and their crews overwhelmed. The Void pressed deeper into the Lura system, and their starfighters, sleek and agile, engaged the enemy in a desperate dance of death. The Lura pilots, renowned for their precision and tactical acumen, fought with unmatched skill and courage. Their energy cannons carved fiery paths through the enemy ranks, but the Void starfighters, grotesque amalgamations of flesh and metal, were relentless, their numbers seemingly endless. In the heart of Lura Prime, the Council of Elders watched in horror as the holographic displays in the Chamber of Harmony depicted the unfolding catastrophe. The once serene faces of the Elders were now etched with grim determination and a growing sense of despair. "We cannot hold them back," Elder Lyra lamented, her voice trembling with emotion. "Our defenses are failing, our warriors are falling, and our homeworld is in grave danger. We must not give up hope," Elder Orion declared, his voice resolute. "We've always been a resourceful and resilient people. We must find a way to survive this onslaught, but what can we do?" Elder Lyra asked, her voice laced with desperation. "We are no match for the Void's overwhelming might." Elder Orion paused, his eyes scanning the faces of his fellow elders. "We must send out an SOS," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Perhaps there are others in the galaxy who can come to our aid." The elders, their hearts heavy with the weight of their decision, transmitted a distress signal, their plea for help echoing through the vast expanse of space. They waited, their hopes dwindling with each passing moment, until a transmission crackled through the system. "This is Admiral Bailey of the Human Systems Alliance," a deep, resolute voice declared. "We've received your distress call, Lura. Sit tight, human warship incoming." Aboard the HSS Indomitable, Admiral Bailey stood on the bridge, his imposing figure casting a long shadow across the holographic tactical display. The display pulsed with a kaleidoscope of data, a real-time representation of the unfolding conflict in the Lura system. His officers, their faces etched with determination and grim anticipation, awaited his orders. Captain Bailey barked, his voice echoing through the bridge, "Give me a full tactical assessment." "What are we up against?" Captain Michaels, a seasoned veteran with a distinguished service record, stepped forward. "Admiral," he began, his voice steady, "the Void fleet is vast, comprised of a variety of bioorganic vessels seemingly adapted for specific roles. Their starfighters are fast and maneuverable, but they lack discipline and tactical coherence." "What about their capital ships?" Bailey inquired, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. "Their capital ships are the real threat," Michaels replied. "They're heavily armed and shielded, and their organic nature makes them incredibly resilient. They seem to possess a form of collective consciousness, coordinating their attacks with an eerie efficiency." Bailey nodded, absorbing the information. "Intelligence," he said, turning to his intelligence officer, Lieutenant Commander Singh. "What do we know about the Void's origins and motives?" Singh, a young officer with a sharp mind and a keen eye for detail, cleared her throat. "Sir," she began, "the Void is a relatively new player on the galactic stage. They emerged from the uncharted depths of the Perseus Arm, conquering and assimilating countless civilizations along the way. Their motives are unclear, but their actions suggest a desire for galactic domination." "A desire for domination," Bailey mused. "Sounds familiar." He turned back to the tactical display, his mind racing. The Void was a formidable foe, unlike anything the humans had encountered before, but the Lura, a peaceful and technologically advanced civilization, were counting on them. Bailey knew that the stakes were high, but he also knew that his crew was more than capable of rising to the challenge. "Gentlemen," he declared, his voice ringing with confidence, "we have a fight on our hands, a fight for the survival of the Lura and for the future of the galaxy. We will not fail them. Prepare for combat." The bridge crew snapped to attention, their eyes gleaming with determination. The Indomitable, its engines thrumming with power, surged forward, its course set for the Lura system. As they approached the outer reaches of the system, the sensors detected the presence of the Void fleet, their bioorganic vessels writhing and pulsating like a monstrous organism. Admiral Bailey's lips curled into a grim smile. "Showtime, gentlemen," he said. "Let's give these bastards a taste of human fury." The Lura homeworld, once a beacon of peace and prosperity, was now a battleground. The Void's invasion had plunged the once tranquil planet into a maelstrom of violence and destruction. The Lura, unaccustomed to war, fought with a ferocity born of desperation, defending every inch of their beloved homeworld. In the crystalline city of Alios, Lura warriors, clad in shimmering armor, clashed with void creatures in the narrow streets, their energy blades flashing like lightning as they parried and thrust. The air crackled with energy blasts, the once pristine buildings scarred and blackened by the relentless bombardment. Lura civilians, armed with makeshift weapons and fueled by a burning desire to protect their homes, joined the fray, their courage and determination inspiring their warriors to fight on. In the lush forests of Sylvana, Lura rangers, masters of stealth and marksmanship, waged a guerrilla war against the Void's ground forces. Clad in camouflage cloaks and armed with silent energy rifles, they ambushed the enemy from the shadows, picking off their foes one by one. The Void creatures, accustomed to overwhelming their opponents with sheer numbers, were frustrated and disoriented by the Lura's hit-and-run tactics. In the depths of the Cerulean Sea, Lura's submarines, sleek and silent, hunted the Void's aquatic vessels, these bioorganic nightmares, resembling monstrous jellyfish with tentacles lined with razor-sharp spines, prowled the depths, their bioluminescent bodies casting an eerie glow. The Lura submarines, equipped with advanced sonar and torpedoes, stalked their prey, the crews exhibiting nerves of steel as they launched their attacks. In the skies above Lura Prime, the Lura starfighters continued their desperate dance of death with the Void swarms. Despite their numerical disadvantage, the Lura pilots displayed remarkable skill and ingenuity, their starfighters darting through the enemy ranks, unleashing deadly volleys of energy fire. Each battle, each skirmish was a testament to the Lura's unwavering spirit and their refusal to surrender to the Void's tyranny. They fought for their homes, their families, their way of life. They fought for the very survival of their species. But despite their valiant efforts, the tide of the battle seemed to be turning against them. The Void's relentless advance was slowly but surely overwhelming the Lura's defenses. Sure, a Void soldier of the Kail species stood over a huddled group of Lura civilians, their trembling forms and wide eyes filled with terror fueling his sadistic pleasure. He raised his chitinous limb, a wicked energy blade extending from its tip, the air around it shimmering with deadly potential. A cruel grin spread across his insectoid face, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. He savored the moment, relishing the fear he saw in their eyes. The Lura civilians, their faces pale and drawn, huddled closer together, their bodies trembling with fear. A young mother clutched her child to her chest, whispering soothing words in a desperate attempt to calm the infant's cries. An elderly Lura, his once proud posture now stooped with age and despair, closed his eyes and offered a silent prayer to the universe. A young warrior, his face bloodied and bruised from battle, glared defiantly at Shur, his hand gripping the hilt of his broken energy blade. Shur, his grin widening, prepared to strike, to end the lives of these pathetic creatures and bask in the glory of his conquest. But just as he was about to unleash his deadly blow, a blinding flash of light erupted in the sky above. The ground trembled beneath their feet, the shockwave from the explosion in outer orbit rippling through the atmosphere. Shur, startled by the sudden interruption, turned his attention to the sky, his energy blade faltering. The other Void warriors, equally surprised, paused their advance, their attention drawn to the spectacle unfolding above. The Lura civilians, their fear momentarily forgotten, watched in awe as a colossal object, its hull shimmering with a radiant energy field, emerged from the swirling cloud of debris. The object, a massive warship unlike anything they'd ever seen, moved with a grace that belied its size, its engines thrumming with a deep, resonant hum. As the warship descended toward the planet, its hull emblazoned with the symbol of a stylized eagle, a wave of hope washed over the Lura civilians. Could this be the answer to their prayers? Could this be the salvation they so desperately needed? Admiral Bailey stood on the bridge of the HSS Indomitable, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. The Void fleet, a sprawling mass of bioorganic vessels, pulsed and writhed in the inky blackness of space, a grotesque cancer spreading across the Lura system. Bailey, his face a mask of grim determination, surveyed the enemy with the cold, calculating gaze of a predator. Tactical, he barked, his voice echoing through the bridge, "Give me a target analysis. I want to know the weak points of their fleet." Lieutenant Commander Michaels, his fingers dancing across the controls, projected a detailed schematic of a Void capital ship onto the holographic display. "Sir," he began, his voice steady, "their capital ships are heavily armored, but their energy shields are concentrated around their vital organs. leaving their weapon systems relatively exposed. "What about the starfighters?" Bailey inquired, his eyes scanning the tactical display. "Their starfighters are fast and maneuverable," Michaels replied, "but they lack the firepower and armor of our fighters. They rely on swarming tactics and overwhelming numbers to compensate for their individual weaknesses." Bailey nodded, absorbing the information. He turned to his weapons officer, Lieutenant Commander Ramirez. "Weapons," he said, his voice low and menacing. "Prepare a strike on their capital ships. Target their weapon systems first, then their shield generators. I want those ships crippled and vulnerable." Ramirez, a seasoned veteran with a reputation for pinpoint accuracy, acknowledged the order. "Aye, sir," he replied, his fingers flying across the controls as he programmed the Indomitable's weapon systems. Bailey turned back to the tactical display, his eyes narrowing as he focused on a particularly large Void capital ship, its bioluminescent glow pulsating with an eerie intensity. "That one," he said, pointing at the ship. "That's our primary target. I want that ship out of the fight." The Indomitable's weapon systems hummed to life, energy coursing through their conduits. The ship's forward batteries, a formidable array of railguns and energy cannons, rotated toward their target, their barrels glowing with deadly heat. "Fire," Bailey commanded. A blinding barrage of energy erupted from the Indomitable, streaking toward the Void capital ship. The ship's shields, caught off guard, flickered and failed under the relentless assault. The energy bolts slammed into the ship's hull, tearing through its organic armor, igniting fires and triggering a series of catastrophic explosions. The Void capital ship, mortally wounded, began to break apart, its bioluminescent glow fading as its life force ebbed away. The other Void vessels, sensing the death of their leader, recoiled in shock and confusion. Bailey, a grim smile playing on his lips, watched the spectacle unfold. "That's one down," he said. "Now let's finish the job." The void of space erupted in a maelstrom of energy and fury as the Human Systems Alliance fleet engaged the Void Armada. Human starfighters, sleek and agile, darted through the chaos like vengeful spirits, their energy cannons blazing. The Void's bioorganic fighters, grotesque and misshapen, swarmed in response, their numbers a writhing, undulating mass. Lieutenant Emily Chen, callsign Phoenix, piloted her F-22 Raptor through the fray, her eyes scanning the battlefield for targets. She spotted a cluster of Void fighters, their organic hulls gleaming in the starlight, and unleashed a volley of missiles. The missiles, guided by advanced targeting systems, struck their targets with pinpoint accuracy, sending the Void fighters tumbling into the abyss. Chen grinned, her adrenaline surging. "Scratch 3, she announced over the comm system, her voice crackling with static. "Who's next?" Her wingman, Lieutenant Alex Ramirez, callsign Razor, banked his fighter sharply, avoiding a volley of energy blast from a Void fighter. "I've got one on my tail," Phoenix, he said, his voice strained. "Can you give me some cover on my way?" Razor, Chen replied, her fighter streaking toward Ramirez's position. She unleashed a barrage of cannon fire, the energy bolts ripping through the Void fighter's hull, sending it spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, the Indomitable, its massive form dwarfing the surrounding starfighters, unleashed a devastating broadside against a Void capital ship. The ship's energy shields, already weakened by the previous attack, collapsed under the onslaught. The Indomitable's railguns and energy cannons roared, their projectiles tearing into the ship's hull, causing catastrophic damage. The Void capital ship, its bioluminescent glow flickering and fading, began to break apart, its organic structure unable to withstand the punishment. The ship's death throes were a gruesome spectacle, its flesh and chitin rupturing, spewing noxious fluids into the void. Admiral Bailey watched the scene unfold with grim satisfaction. "Good shooting," Ramirez, he commended. "Keep the pressure on," the battle raged on, the human's superior technology and tactical acumen proving to be a decisive advantage. The Void, despite their overwhelming numbers, were outmatched and outmaneuvered at every turn. Their fighters fell in droves, their capital ships crippled and destroyed. But the Void, their collective consciousness driven by an insatiable thirst for conquest, refused to yield. They fought with a ferocity born of desperation, their bioorganic vessels swarming the Indomitable, their energy weapons blazing. The Indomitable, its shields shimmering under the onslaught, weathered the storm, its point defense systems blasting away incoming projectiles. The ship's crew, their faces etched with determination, worked tirelessly to maintain their defenses and keep their weapons firing. Admiral Bailey, his eyes fixed on the tactical display, knew that the battle was far from over. The Void, though battered and bruised, were still a formidable foe. But he also knew that his crew, the finest in the Human Systems Alliance, would not rest until the enemy was vanquished. Lieutenant Commander Singh. Admiral Bailey's voice cut through the chaos of the bridge. Status update on the Void flagship. Singh, her fingers flying across the holographic display, quickly analyzed the data streaming in from the sensors. Sir, she reported, the flagship is a behemoth-class bioorganic vessel, heavily armed and shielded. It appears to be the nerve center of the fleet, coordinating their attacks and providing tactical support. Bailey nodded, his eyes narrowing as he considered his options. Can we take it out? Singh hesitated, her brow furrowed in concentration. It will be difficult, sir, she replied. The flagship is heavily defended, and its organic nature makes it incredibly resilient. But if we can disable its command and control systems, we might be able to disrupt the Void's coordination and turn the tide of the battle. Bailey's lips curled into a grim smile. Difficult, but not impossible, he said. Lieutenant Commander Ramirez, prepare a concentrated attack on the flagship. Target its command and control systems first, then its shield generators. I want that ship crippled and vulnerable. Ramirez, his eyes gleaming with anticipation, acknowledged the order. Aye, sir, he replied, his fingers dancing across the controls as he adjusted the Indomitable's weapon systems. The Indomitable, its engines thrumming with power, surged forward, its course set for the Void flagship. The other human warships, sensing the shift in tactics, followed suit, their weapons batteries primed and ready. As the Indomitable approached the flagship, it unleashed a devastating barrage of fire. Railgun projectiles traveling at hypersonic speed slammed into the flagship's hull, tearing through its organic armor. Energy beams, concentrated and focused, sliced through its shields, leaving gaping holes in its defenses. The Void flagship, struggling to maintain its cohesion, its command and control systems damaged beyond repair, sputtered and failed, sending the Void fleet into disarray. The flagship's once coordinated attacks became erratic and unfocused, their effectiveness dimming with each passing moment. Bailey, watching the chaos unfold, knew that the tide of the battle was turning. The Void, their flagship crippled and their coordination disrupted, were losing their grip on the battlefield. He turned to his communications officer, Lieutenant Commander Jackson. Jackson, he said, his voice ringing with triumph, send a message to all ships. The flagship is down. Press the attack and finish this. The human fleet, their spirits soaring, redoubled their efforts, their weapons blazing as they hunted down the remaining Void vessels. The Void, their morale shattered, fought with diminishing ferocity, their once formidable fleet now a scattered and disorganized rabble. The tide of the space battle had turned, but the battle on the surface of Lura Prime continued to unfold. Reports from Lura survivors, their voices filled with desperation and terror, painted a grim picture of the Void's atrocities. Admiral Lieutenant Commander Singh's voice trembled slightly as she relayed the latest transmission. We're receiving reports of widespread civilian casualties. The Void are. They're not taking prisoners. Bailey's jaw clenched, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the armrest of his command chair. The Void's brutality, their senseless slaughter of innocents, ignited a cold fury within him. He had seen the horrors of war before, but this was different. This was a level of depravity that even he, a hardened veteran, found difficult to comprehend. Tactical, he barked, his voice thick with rage. Give me a visual. On the ground, the holographic display shifted, revealing a scene of utter chaos and devastation. Void warriors, their grotesque forms silhouetted against the burning ruins of Allura City, were herding terrified civilians into makeshift enclosures. The screams of the Lura, their pleas for mercy falling on deaf ears, echoed through the bridge of the Indomitable. Bailey could take no more. He slammed his fist on the armrest, his decision made. Captain, he ordered, his voice steely, prepare the Marines for immediate deployment. I want boots on the ground within the hour. We're going to put a stop to this. Captain Michaels, his face mirroring Bailey's grim determination, snapped to attention. Aye, sir, he replied, turning to relay the order. Within minutes, the Indomitable's hangar bays were abuzz with activity. Marines, clad in their advanced combat armor and armed with an array of weaponry, boarded their dropships, their faces grim as they prepared for the fight ahead. Bailey watched the scene unfold from the bridge, his heart heavy with the weight of his decision. He knew that sending Marines into the heart of the Void's invasion force was a risky move, but he also knew that it was the only way to save the Lura civilians from certain death. As the dropships launched from the Indomitable, their engines roaring, Bailey turned to his crew. Gentlemen, he said, his voice filled with resolve, we are about to embark on a mission of mercy. We are going to show the Void the true meaning of humanity. We are going to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. We are going to give the Lura a fighting chance. The dropships descended through the smoke-filled skies of Lura Prime, their engines screaming a defiant roar. Inside, a squad of human Marines, their faces grim and determined, braced themselves for impact. Sergeant Major Thomas Hammer Harrison, a veteran of countless battles, checked his gear one last time, his fingers tightening around the grip of his pulse rifle. The dropships touched down in a hail of dust and debris, their hatches slamming open. The Marines, their movements swift and practiced, poured out of the ships, taking up defensive positions around the perimeter. The air crackled with the sound of energy weapons charging as the Marines scanned their surroundings for any sign of the enemy. Eyes peeled, Marines' Hammer's voice barked through their helmets. "We're in hostile territory. Stay frosty." The squad, led by Hammer, moved out, their boots crunching on the shattered crystal of the ruined Lura city. The air was thick with the stench of smoke and burning flesh, a grim reminder of the Void's brutality. The Marines, their senses heightened, scanned the ruins for any sign of movement, their weapons at the ready. A flicker of movement in the shadows caught Hammer's eye. He raised his hand, signaling the squad to halt. The Marines, their pulse rifles trained on the shadows, waited for Hammer's command. "Contact front," Hammer whispered, his voice barely audible over the comm system. 2:00, moving fast. The shadows coalesced into the forms of two Void warriors, their grotesque bodies glistening with an oily sheen. The warriors, their claws extended and their fangs bared, charged toward the Marines, their guttural roars echoing through the ruins. The Marines opened fire, their pulse rifles spitting bolts of energy. The Void warriors, their organic armor offering some protection, staggered under the onslaught but continued their advance. "Frag out," Hammer shouted, tossing a grenade toward the oncoming warriors. The grenade, its casing etched with Human Systems Alliance emblems, exploded in a blinding flash of light and shrapnel. The Void warriors, their bodies riddled with shrapnel, collapsed to the ground, their limbs twitching spasmodically. The Marines, their rifles still smoking, cautiously approached the fallen warriors, their eyes scanning for any sign of life. Hammer, his pulse rifle trained on the twitching bodies, knelt down and placed his hand on one of the warriors' necks. He felt a faint pulse, a flicker of life still clinging to the dying creature. Medic, Hammer called out, his voice urgent. "We've got a wounded Void." A Marine, his armor emblazoned with the Red Cross of the Medical Corps, rushed forward, his medkit in hand. He knelt beside the wounded warrior, his fingers probing the creature's wound. "He's alive, but barely," the medic reported. "He's lost a lot of blood, and his internal organs are severely damaged." Hammer, his face grim, considered his options. The wounded warrior, though an enemy, was still a living being. The humans, unlike the Void, did not kill their prisoners. "We're not leaving him to die," he said, his voice firm. "Secure him and let's find some Lura to take him. His fate is theirs to decide." The Marines, their faces a mix of surprise and admiration, quickly set to work. They bound the wounded Void warrior with energy restraints, ensuring that he could not escape or harm anyone. Then they searched the surrounding ruins for any sign of Lura survivors. Their search did not take long. In a nearby alleyway, they found a group of Lura civilians huddled together, their faces pale and drawn. The Marines approached cautiously, their weapons lowered, their intentions peaceful. "We are from the Human Systems Alliance," Hammer announced, his voice amplified by his helmet speakers. "We are here to help the Lura civilians." Their eyes, wide with fear and suspicion, slowly emerged from their hiding place. They were a pitiful sight, their clothes torn and dirty, their bodies emaciated from lack of food and water, but their eyes, despite their suffering, still had a spark of hope. Hammer's heart ached for these innocent victims of the Void's brutality. He explained their mission and their discovery of the wounded Void warrior. He offered the Lura the chance to decide what to do with the prisoner. The Lura, after a brief discussion among themselves, made their decision. They would not kill the wounded warrior. Instead, they would imprison him, tend to his wounds, and attempt to rehabilitate him. They believed that even the most hardened of souls could be redeemed, that even the Void's twisted creatures could be shown the error of their ways. The Marines, impressed by the Lura's compassion and their unwavering belief in the inherent goodness of all beings, helped them transport the wounded warrior to a secure location. Then they continued their mission, their hearts filled with a renewed sense of purpose. They knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult, but they also knew that they were fighting for a just cause, a cause worth dying for. In the depths of Lura Prime, within the subterranean sanctuary that served as their temporary refuge, the Council of Elders convened a solemn meeting, their faces etched with the scars of recent trauma. They bore the weight of their people's suffering, but in their eyes, a newfound spark of hope flickered, fueled by the arrival of their unexpected allies. Admiral Bailey, standing tall in his crisp uniform, addressed the council. Elders of Lura, he began, his voice resonant with respect. The Human Systems Alliance stands with you in this fight against the Void. We will not rest until every last trace of their presence is eradicated from your world. Elder Lyra, the eldest and wisest of the council, nodded solemnly. Admiral Bailey, she said, her voice soft but firm, we are grateful for your assistance, but the Void's infestation runs deep. They have burrowed into our cities, our forests, our oceans. We must root them out wherever they may hide. Bailey's gaze hardened. Then we shall root them out together, he declared. We will combine our strengths, our knowledge, our resources. We will not allow the Void to escape justice. The Council and the Admiral exchanged a look of mutual understanding, a silent pact forged in the crucible of war. Together, they devised a plan, a multi-pronged assault aimed at eradicating the Void's remaining forces. The Lura, utilizing their intimate knowledge of their homeworld's terrain and their advanced technology, would lead the ground offensive. Their warriors, fueled by a burning desire for vengeance and the unwavering support of their people, would scour every corner of the planet, hunting down the Void's scattered remains. The human Marines, their combat prowess honed through countless battles, would provide crucial support, their advanced weaponry and tactical expertise proving invaluable in the fight against the elusive enemy. They would work alongside the Lura warriors, sharing their knowledge and experience, forging a bond of camaraderie and trust. The Indomitable, its formidable arsenal of weapons and sensors, would provide orbital support, scanning the planet for any sign of Void activity and raining down devastating firepower on any targets identified. Its crew, their skills sharpened by the recent space battle, worked tirelessly to ensure that no Void vessel escaped their vigilant gaze. The hunt began in earnest, a relentless pursuit that spanned days and nights. The Lura warriors, their senses heightened by their connection to their home world, tracked the Void's movements through the forests, the mountains, and the depths of the sea. The human Marines, their advanced armor and weaponry providing them with a decisive advantage, engaged the enemy in fierce firefights, their pulse rifles and energy blades carving a bloody path through the Void's ranks. The Indomitable, its sensors sweeping the planet's surface, detected a concentration of Void activity in a remote mountain range. Lura warriors and human Marines, guided by the Indomitable's precise coordinates, converged on the location, their hearts pounding with anticipation. They found the Void holed up in a network of caves, their bioorganic bodies writhing and pulsating in the dim light. Lura and humans, their weapons raised, charged into the caves, their battle cries echoing through the subterranean labyrinth. The battle was brutal and bloody, a desperate struggle for survival. The Void, cornered and desperate, fought with a ferocity that belied their dwindling numbers. But the Lura and humans, their resolve strengthened by their shared purpose, proved too much for the enemy. In the end, the Void were vanquished, their bodies littering the cave floor, their threat to the Lura finally extinguished. The Lura and humans, their faces streaked with sweat and blood, emerged from the caves, their victory hard-won, but undeniable. The Lura homeworld, though scarred and wounded, began to heal. The crystalline cities, once shattered and defiled, were slowly rebuilt, their shimmering facades a testament to the Lura's resilience and unwavering spirit. The forests of Sylvana, once ravaged by war, began to bloom anew, their vibrant colors a symbol of hope and renewal. In the heart of Lura Prime, a ceremony of gratitude and remembrance was held. Lura and humans stood side by side, their heads bowed in respect for the fallen. Admiral Bailey, his uniform immaculate, his medals gleaming in the sunlight, spoke words of comfort and reassurance, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. Today, he declared, we celebrate not only our victory over the Void but also the birth of a new alliance, a partnership forged in the fires of adversity. We have learned much from each other, Lura and humans, and we have discovered that our differences, far from dividing us, are in fact our greatest strengths. Elder Lyra, her eyes filled with tears of gratitude and hope, stepped forward. Admiral Bailey, she said, her voice filled with emotion, you and your people have saved our world, our civilization. We are eternally grateful for your courage, your compassion, and your unwavering commitment to justice. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the assembled crowd. Today, she continued, we mark the beginning of a new era, an era of peace, cooperation, and mutual understanding. We, Lura and humans, will stand together as a beacon of hope in a galaxy too often consumed by darkness. We will show the universe that even the most disparate of species can unite in the face of adversity, that even the most devastating of wars can give birth to a lasting peace. The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the chamber and beyond, a testament to the enduring spirit of hope and the boundless potential of unity. The Lura and humans, their hearts filled with gratitude and determination, embraced their new alliance, ready to face the future together, knowing that as long as they stood united, they would overcome any challenge, any threat, any darkness that might come their way. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel. For every comment that says we will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.